Good morning, class. You can figure out a lot by what I just said and how I said it. I said, good morning, class, indicating that it's morning and I'm addressing you, the class. You can tell from the enthusiasm in my voice that I'm in a good mood and I'm excited for the day. Had I said it like this, good morning, class, you could assume that I'm not in a good mood and that there's a level of obligation behind what I'm saying. Writers do the same with books, short stories, plays, and other pieces of literature when they use dialogue. Today, I will explain to you the main purposes of dialogue, setting the mood, revealing the character, developing the plot, propelling the resolution, and creating subtext. Let's start with setting the mood. You want your readers to have a certain feel for the scene or chapter. A great way to establish or change the mood is to use dialogue. You could start out with a couple flirting at the beginning of their date, and in the middle of your romantic scene when Mr. Right is about to pop the question, you could have a man screaming as he has caught sight of the aliens that are in the sky, and change the story over to one of heart-racing action. We see this used in Shakespeare's Hamlet, Act 1, Scene 4. The air bites shrewdly, it is very cold. It is a nipping and an eager air. What hour now? I think it lacks a 12. In that short dialogue, we have learned the time and temperature, establishing the ominous feeling shared by Hamlet and Horatio. Let's move on to revealing the character. You can tell a lot by the character by the things they say. This can be something direct, such as the dreamy high school quarterback saying, "I've always loved playing football," or something a little subtler, like the closet poet cheerleader muttering, "I read occasionally, but not that much." This is used in the passage from Hills Like White Elephants by Ernest Hemingway. "Yes," said the girl, "everything tastes of licorice, especially all the things you've waited so long for, like absinthe. Oh, cut it out." Absinthe is a kind of liquor that, during the time the story was written, was believed to cause miscarriages. This section of dialogue reveals that the girl is pregnant and her companion wants her to have an abortion. Now we'll talk about developing the plot. Instead of just writing what happened, add some dialogue to keep the plot going in an interesting way. You can have two people discussing what to do with the dog they just found to find out what happens to the Flumpy Pop next. Or you can end a scene with the hero agreeing with the enemy to meet them the next morning to battle things out once and for all. An example of this can be found in A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. "I want arsenic." The druggist looked down at her. She looked back at him, erect, her face like a strained flag. "Why, of course," the druggist said, "if that's what you want. But the law requires to know what you are using it for." Miss Emily just stared at him, her head tilted back in order to look him in the eye, until he looked away and went and got the arsenic and wrapped it up. Not only do we see that Emily is in desperate need for arsenic, for what purpose no one knows, but we also see that, in the lack of dialogue from her when asked about what she plans to use the poison for, she's aiming to keep it a secret, which causes suspicion amongst the townspeople that she plans to kill herself. Let's talk about propelling the resolution. You can make the ending of your story more impactful with dialogue that wraps up the main conflict. Have your president give an apologetic speech to a graciously accepting crowd at the end of your drama to show that all has been forgiven. Or finish up your novel with the two main characters agreeing to go to their favorite ice cream parlor to celebrate their victory. This technique is seen in O. Henry's The Gift of the Magi. "Dell," said he, "let's put our Christmas presents away and keep 'em a while. They're too nice to use just at present. I sold the watch to get the money to buy your combs. And now suppose you put the chops on." We see that both Della and Jim have realized that they sold their most valuable possessions to buy gifts for the other person, Jim has decided they can go on with their Christmas and enjoy each other's company, with or without gifts. And now, last but not least, creating subtext. When you want your reader to know something about the conflict that the characters are not aware of, dialogue is a great way to let your audience in on the secret. It's tricky to perfect, but when used, shows depth in the characters and ambiguousness in the story. Let's look at Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire by J.K. Rowling. "It's hot, isn't it?" said Hermione, fanning herself with her hand. "Victor's just gone to get some drinks." Ron gave her a withering look. "Victor?" he said. "Hasn't he asked you to call him Vicky yet?" Hermione looked at him in surprise. "What's up with you?" she said. "If you don't know," said Ron scathingly, "I'm not going to tell you." Hermione stared at him, then at Harry, who shrugged. "Ron, what? He's from Durmstrang," spat Ron. "He's competing against Harry! Against Hogwarts! You're... Ron was obviously casting around for words strong enough to describe Hermione's crime. "Fraternizing with the enemy, that's what you're doing." Although it is not apparent in the dialogue, Ron is actually mad at Hermione for going to the dance with Victor because he has feelings for her and wanted to go with her, but would rather yell at her for going with a boy from another school than admit that to her. Hermione is completely aware of this and reciprocates his feelings, but would rather keep going with what's going on instead of revealing this to Ron. Harry is obviously oblivious to everything and simply thinks that they are arguing about Hermione spending time with, as Ron calls Victor, the enemy. Now you know the purposes of dialogue. Let's see you apply your knowledge in the next creative writing piece.